Welcome to the Unscripted Authentic Leadership podcast where we are seeking to lead change. We're also seeking to understand. I am your host, Lafayette Lane, joined by my co-host, John LeBron. We are here for another exciting week, for another exciting episode to bring unto you, our audience. Before we get into the topic, we definitely want to say thank you to all of you that have been rocking with us, day one supporters, those that are new, that may have just been learning about the podcast. We say thank you to our YouTube audience that have subscribed to our channel, Unscripted Authentic Leadership. We say thank you. Those of you that are following us on Facebook and our page there, Unscripted Authentic Leadership, even those that are subscribed and following us on our Instagram page at Unscripted Leadership. And those that may not watch the podcast, but you listen to the podcast via any of the podcast platforms that you can find our podcast on, such as Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Buzzsprout, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Alexa, and so forth. You can find our podcast there. Listen, we've been going for a couple of weeks, and we're here to get back and get the ball rolling again. I'm doing well. Those of you that may not know, I did get married, and so I'm excited, and it's an exciting time for me.
Yeah, baby.
And it feels good to be back. How are you doing, bro?
I'm good. We missed you, man. So excited for you. I got to watch him get married via Zoom. That was fun.
Yeah,
I invited my entire office staff to watch as well. They weren't invited, but
oh God.
they watched.
Well, thank
It was
you.
great. It was beautiful. Loved it. So yeah, glad to be back.
Absolutely. Those of you that were tuning in recently, the last episode we touched on the Rise Up series that we will be doing, not just for November. It's not really just a monthly series or a 1 month series, I should say, but we will be featuring different guests that we are calling up series. Those of you that have a story, interesting time of struggle, or interesting story that you want to share, and you have overcome those obstacles, those negative starts and things that you have overcome, and you want to share your story, we definitely want you to be a part of this Rise Up series. This series is especially for you. And if you are interested in doing that, we want you to email us, unscriptedleadership@gmail.com. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about your story. Tell us about, how God has brought you out, and whatever situation you come from. Doesn't have to be, the most dramatic. It can be the most dramatic. Whatever it is, we're definitely interested in hearing your story of how you've overcome the struggle, overcome the obstacles, overcome the negativity, and those that were in your life that may have said you never would be anything. And looking at you today, you are a success story and you are an overcomer. We definitely want to hear from you. And so today we're kind of just going to do a topic on rising up and just share our thoughts, John and myself, just our thoughts on what it means to us, and maybe share some of our own experiences and our thought processes on mistakes and circumstances that happen to us, because we all have to live out this experience called life. And so we all have a testimony, we all have a story that we can share of some sort of the things that we've come through and the things that we have come over. I think we'd be surprised that sometimes you can help the next person, not by giving them money, but by telling them how you were able to overcome your rough situation. You were able to overcome your rough circumstance. You were able to overcome your obstacles and your struggles. And you also could be a preventative measure for someone. I think many times, John, we are reactive in society, and we always are quick to react to a situation instead of being proactive. One of the ways to be proactive is telling people and not being ashamed of some of the rough areas and some of the rough patches that you've come through, and that has made you to the person that you are today. the reality is that we all have had some broken pieces. We all have been through some things and are still going through things, and that's made us who we are today. And so we want to get into this whole topic of rising up. When I looked up this term of what it means to rise up, it means to come to the surface, to come up, to ascend, to go up, and to travel up. And I don't know who that is that's listening to this, and I'm trying not to go to the preacher mode, but that definition just really stirred me up, man. Um, that sometimes I heard TD Jake said that when you're at your lowest point, the only way to go up, the only direction is to go up. You're already at your lowest point. The only way that you can go is up. So when I thought about that, about rising and ascending and traveling up, and I thought in perspective on my mind about this whole year of 2020 and the tragedy and the calamity and the pandemic and the election and the politics of everything, it has knocked a lot of people off their feet. It's knocked a lot of families that have lost loved ones, people that have lost jobs that feel like they cannot get up from where they are. They've lost finances. They've lost stability of mind. People have literally lost their mind, their mental faculties, and they don't know where to go to. They don't know where to turn. They don't know where to look to. We're here to encourage you, to tell you, you can rise up and you can get up again. That you can come up. You can come to the surface. There are many of you that have been working and lurking in the background, and you feel like that is your spot and that is your place. And I'm not here to tell you there's nothing wrong with that, because some of the people that are the most gifted, you'll never see them on the front and center stage. But there's also a group of you that you have to know that even though this has been a crazy year, you're getting ready to come to the surface. You're getting ready to rise up, even from underneath of those cracks. Sometimes you can walk down a sidewalk and you can see through the cracks. There's a flower, there's plants that is growing through the cracks, that's growing through, even though the environment that it's in, it still has the ability to rise up to the surface and to travel up. And so what is your thoughts, bro, when you think about rising up?
Yeah, I love what you said about when you hit the bottom, there's only one way to go, and that's up. I used to say when you're going through hell, don't stop, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think your way is a nicer way of saying it. Or I say if you're walking through crap, why are you stopping, right?
Yeah.
But same idea. So everybody goes through something. And if you think about it, you're always going through something.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes it's worse than others, but I cannot, as I thought about it today, like, has there ever been a time when I had nothing to go through? No. If you're never going through something, then that means you're really not growing. And so
Ooh.
circumstances just give you that opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
Situations give you that opportunity to get stronger, right? It's like lifting weights. The only way you get stronger is by pushing the weights that are hard to move, right?
Yeah.
And as you do it, you actually tear small little tears in your muscles, and then the muscles repair themselves stronger to support that weight the next time. And so, same idea. When something hits you, you have to overcome that, and that actually makes you stronger for the next time. And then we've mentioned this before. As you go through those things, and you look back, it doesn't seem nearly as big as it was the first time.
Absolutely. Love how you said if you're not going through anything, you're not growing. One of the thoughts that came to my mind as you kept saying through, I think many times when we tell people that we're going through, we always look at it from a negative connotation. But the reality is that if you're going through, that means you're almost out of it. The fact that you can say, I am going through, means you are in a forward motion. You are not stuck. You are not stagnant. You are not in park. You are not in neutral. You are going through, and you will get to the other side. So this whole notion of rising up and rise up and going through dealing with your different aspects of life, dealing with tragedy, dealing with loss, dealing with mistakes that we've made, whether it's because of our own ignorance, because of decisions that we've made, or the circumstances that we've been placed in. A lot of times we can allow our mistakes and our circumstances to define us. We can allow the decisions that we've made. It could have been 10, 15 years ago, it could have been yesterday. And because we made these decisions that we look at as mistakes and not building blocks or opportunities, we allow these decisions and mistakes to define us and to keep us confined instead of it propelling us into our future and into our purpose. And I think a lot of times we have to stop saying that everything is a mistake and say, listen, either I win or I learn. So I may not have had the desired outcome that I wanted in this particular situation on my job. I may have not gotten that particular uh, job that I wanted on the interview. I may have not been at the place I wanted to be post college. I may not have the neighborhood. I may not live where I want to live. I may not drive what I want to drive necessarily. But you always have to look at everything that you go through in life as a lesson that can be learned. There's a quote that I love that I keep in the forefront of my mind for me personally is that says forget the mistake and remember the lesson. That if we could take look at that glass, look at it in a different vantage point, that it's not so much the mistakes that will keep you bound, it's if you don't learn the lessons from the mistakes. And so focusing on the lessons from those things that may not have gone right in your life and not allowing your mistakes or your circumstances to define you. John, kind of talk about why it's important that we should not allow our mistakes or our circumstances to define us.
Yeah, you cannot let your circumstance define your life. Life is 10% of what happens to us, 90% of how we react to what happens to us.
Good.
It's all about your attitude. You know, defining yourself by your circumstance essentially gives you an excuse to remain in that place. It's like, I'm here because this happened to me. Then your next sentence needs to be, okay, and then what? Right?
Mhm.
I'm here because of this. Boom. Sometimes it's fair, sometimes it just seems unfair. I understand. I get it. Sometimes it's something that you put on yourself, and sometimes it's something somebody else put on you. And, it really stinks when there's a circumstance that might not have been something that was 100% your fault. I get it. But we cannot have the attitude to go through life by letting that define us, because then by doing that, we will now sit through life in that circumstance and, sort of meandering in it because we decided that this situation is going to define me. You see it all the time. People don't succeed because they think this is holding me back, or that there might be something that could be holding you back, right? But it's not any different than saying, Russell Wilson's really short. He shouldn't play quarterback.
Mhm.
I'm sure he heard that a bunch, right? And so, he decided that's not going to be my situation. Yeah, I'm small, but I'm also elusive. So now I'm the most elusive quarterback in the history of the game, and he'll be in the Hall of Fame. And so we have to quit letting circumstances define us, right? You have to start letting your setback be your setup for your get up. Boom, and then go.
Say that again, man.
Yes, let your setback be your setup for your get up.
Yeah,
When you overcome your circumstance, you now have a success
yeah,
to share with somebody. And when you share that success with somebody or with others, then that gives them a belief that they can overcome similar circumstances or the same thing that you're doing, right? So you doing that empowers others to now do the same thing. But somebody has to overcome it. And somebody always will. It just depends on whether it's going to be you or not.
absolutely. So the choice is up to you. Let your setback be your setup or your get up. I love that. And I think that if we keep that in the forefront of our minds, we'll realize that as there's a scripture in the Bible says that all things work together for your good, whether that be a good thing, a bad thing, someone dying, losing a job, all of these things are working together for your good, and it's all a part of your story. When you read a book, you just can't take chapter one and chapter three out of 30 chapters. You've got to take the entire book to get the entire story, or you'll be missing the context to the text, and it'll con you out of the truth. And so, man, that's so important because I think that a lot of people will look at celebrities, they'll look at people who they deem as successful or a success story, and they think that in order to have a successful story, I did not have any pitfalls. I never made any wrong moves. Nothing in life never affected me negatively. I never had any adverse situation. I never had any opposition that I had to go through and I had to fight through. I would suggest to you there is no true success without failure. There is no true success without rejection. Rejection is a part of the process. Uh, Doors and windows being closed in your face, people telling you no and that you can't do it and that you're not strong enough, you're not big enough, you're not smart enough, you're not wise enough, you don't come from the right family, you don't come from the right neighborhood, you don't have the right credentials. It's all a part of the setup for you to get up and to propel yourself forward. I want to give a couple of examples of some people that you may know that you see them as successful today, and you see them in their success story, you see them in the limelight, and you see how much fame and how much money and how much wealth they have acquired. But you don't understand that rejection was a part of their process. Being told no was a part of their process. Being knocked down was a part of their process. You may have heard of this individual. His name is Walt Disney. Walt Disney was fired from his newspaper editor because his newspaper editor told him he wasn't creative enough. Did you hear what I just said? Walt Disney, Walt Disney was fired from his newspaper editor. He was rejected because he wasn't creative enough. Oprah Winfrey was a news reporter, but she was fired because she was told she was too emotional. Uh, Thomas Edison was fired because he worked at a laboratory and he spilled acid on the floor and it ate through the entire floor. He was fired, and so he decided to pursue inventing full time. Steve Jobs, the creator, the originator of Apple, was forced out of his own company only to become the CEO a few months later. Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard. What I'm trying to get you to understand is that all of these people are now influential. They are entrepreneurs. They are multimillionaires and some billionaires. They are responsible for changing the trajectory of how we communicate with each other through Apple, through Microsoft. Oprah Winfrey has she was told she was too emotional. Now she has her own uh, entertainment company. She has one of the biggest talk show hosts in history. Uh, Thomas Edison, who was responsible for the light bulb and the way that we do life, these people were all rejected. But if they would have allowed their rejection to set in and to allow them to set them back, to put them in a place where they say, you know what, my company that I work for does not want me to work there anymore. The people that I'm trying to reach via my audience does not accept the content that I'm giving them. The company that I'm working for, they're firing me. They don't want me anymore. They don't like my ideas. Who cares about this little Apple thing? Who cares about this little Macintosh? Who cares about this Microsoft computer? If they would have stopped and allowed that to stop them in their tracks, where would we be as a society? Where would we be as inventors, as communicators, as influencers, as a population? How would our society be different if every time there was negativity thrown at these people who have overcome them in the monumentous ways? Where would we be? And where would they have been if they would allow that to stop that? stop them. Instead, they turned that pressure and used it to propel them to their greater good, and allowed that to allow them to push them and bring that purpose out from the inside of them, and to allow that to manifest into their greater. John, talk about how important that is, to allow that rejection, and even how it's important that what we deem as a success story may not always look glamorous, and it may not always be have bright lights attached to it, but it still can be a success story.
Yeah. So, a lot of people see somebody's like end of their book, right? And they're like, "Wow, look at they're so successful." If you talk to a lot of successful people, especially as they've aged, you'll see people who are in their 40s like, "Look how successful they are. They just ascended to success," and they'll tell you that they've been working for 20 plus years to be an overnight success story. You know what I mean?
Right.
Meaning they were never an overnight success. It's um, people are not gonna see the behind the scenes work. They're only gonna see the end result, and so you'll do the work long before anybody will ever know your name. Period. That's just how it is, and you have to be okay with that. And it's not just about you know when I say that I'm not. It's not. This is not just about a success story, meaning like because most people contribute that to like business success. Oh, you had failure, 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 and then boom, success. You know, initial public offerings and all that kind of stuff. Now you're a publicly traded company, which I don't think is as big of a deal as people make it out to be, but and that kind of thing. It's not just about that. We have some guests lined up, guys that we want to come on the show who have some real hard circumstances. I have a friend I'm ready for him to share his story pretty soon, who was homeless and a drug addicted, and he was married. His wife, once part of the story that really gets hidden, he shared it in our front of our church before, is he was married and his wife stuck by his side the whole time. She was not a part of the problem, right? She was not under the same addictions as he was. They were homeless because of his addictions, and she never left him. I'm like, wow, I don't know too many people who would have stuck by their husband's side through all that. They would have stuck, but a lot of people stick through the addictions, and then they'll stick through other issues and you spending the money. Not a lot of people won't even do all that, but then to go to we're now homeless and we're now living in a house, that like they're like what do they call it, where you're just living in a house that's vacant, you know what I mean, and stuff like. I don't want to give his whole story away, but it's crazy. And now we're good friends. He's one of the best people I know, and he's a youth leader, youth pastor of this church. Works for school system. I mean, he doesn't have any felony record or anything like that, but he came from the bottom, and he clawed his way back up. He just made a decision one day, and I can't wait for him to share a story. But it's not just about like poor to wealthy or anything like that. I thank God I never had any circumstances like that, right? My biggest circumstances was always like self-image or income or something like that, being poor kind of thing. Money is a lot easier to fix than some of these other things. um, I have a success story to go along with yours. You guys, listen to this and tell me if you know who this is. In 1816, this man's family was forced out of their home, and I'm going to read this to you. He had to work to support them as a young kid. 1818, his mom died. 1831, he started a business and failed. 1832, ran for state legislator, lost. 1832 again, he lost his job. He wanted to go to law school, but he couldn't. They wouldn't let him in. 1833, borrowed money from a friend to begin a business, but then he went bankrupt that year. So then he spent the next 17 years paying off that debt. This is before you could just say, oh, I'm going to, be, nowadays you can just file bankruptcy. You don't have to owe anybody anything. Back then you probably get offed. And then 1834, ran for state legislator again, and he actually won. Good. 1 year later, he was engaged, and his sweetheart died, and heartbroken. Next year, 1836, had a total nervous breakdown, was in bed for 6 months. 1838, sought to become a speaker of the state legislature, lost. 1840, thought to become an elector, lost. 1843, ran for Congress, lost. 1846, ran for Congress again, won, finally, and then good for him. 1848, ran for re-election, lost. 1849, sought the same job and of a sought the job of a land officer, because back then you didn't. It's not the same as now where you did this public service and you made hundreds of thousands of dollars and came out a multimillionaire like a lot of the government people in these offices do now. Back then you really didn't make any money and you had to own some kind of business of your own to support your family. You did it as a service to the country is why you ran for these. That's why some people are like, hey, why'd they have that company? Well, you didn't get wealthy by being in office, but that's a story for another day. And and then what else did I say? 1854, ran for Senate, lost. 1856, he's trying to get the vice presidential nomination. I didn't even get 100 votes for that, so lost. 1858, ran for U.S. Senate, lost. I mean, this guy is really bad. 1860, elected United States president, Abraham Lincoln, 16th president. That is called a history of failure. He's one of the most influential presidents we've ever had in this country. Where would we be without him in this country? I mean, seriously. You guys ever heard of the Emancipation Proclamation?
Right.
If I say that right. Anyways, yes, very, very important president for the history of our country and for a lot of people, for really for everybody in this country. So I know it's a long story, but he, I cannot think of anybody else who had tried and failed longer, and then to become one of the most influential presidents that we've ever had. So,
Wow.
anyways,
Yeah, man. That's the part they don't teach us in school. We know he was the president. We know things that he did as far as slavery, and we know he was assassinated. Um, but I never knew all of those facts that you just listed out. If you look at his successes and his failures, people would probably say he's a failure. Uh, but your success is not measured how many times you failed or how many times you succeeded. It's how many times you got back up and tried again. Is there any um, stories that you want to tell personally, bro, of a circumstance that you've had to overcome? Um, I mean, I can think of a few for myself. Um,
sure, man. It's a lot like I'm a big Rocky Balboa movie fan. He says in one of his one of the last movies he made for that series that it's not about how hard you get hit; it's about how hard you can get hit and then keep going. Um,
yeah,
that's all. That's how winning's done. Is what he says. I have always looked at myself as super blessed, not because life is super easy. Um, I never got into when I see the certain things that people have to overcome, I'm just amazed, and I'm so proud of when I see that. I've learned not to judge people so much for looking like, oh, I can't believe they went through that, and appreciate that they actually got through it, right? And
yeah,
then that's somebody I can now have as another example to show my children, as somebody who had circumstances and overcame it. But of course, we all overcome stuff. I've just got lucky that it was never like a drug addiction or anything like that. Just I don't I can't relate to it. It's never something I dove into, and so I'm just really thankful that I always had guidance around that. But a lot of people don't. I never had any crazy surgery that required back surgery, and then had medications I couldn't get off of. You hear so much of.
hmm
That's how a lot of things happen, right? The pharmaceuticals companies really help you out with that addiction issue. But for me, when I was a kid, I was small. I was a tiny, tiny person. I didn't stop growing until I was into college. So what that means is in high school, I still wasn't growing. I was always really small, or just one of the probably bottom two kids in every class, every sports team. I always played sports as a kid. I was never naturally talented. I was just so skinny and so puny. And my son is very similar. The difference is his self image is a lot better than mine, and he just thinks he's the best thing ever. And I don't tell him otherwise unless it's necessary. Um, because as a kid growing up, I always had this sort of inferiority like complex, right? So I always thought, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm all, everybody always told me, like, if you have kids out here and they're small, or maybe they're big, right? Maybe they're overweight. I wouldn't tell, I don't tell my kids that. He knows, my son knows that he's smaller than most kids. I don't need to tell him that. And the fact that in the way of, hey, wow, you're so tiny, right? Life, people are already going to tell him. And I was told that so much that
Mhm.
even as I got older, I always felt like inferior, as and my self-image was always pretty low. Thank God when I was in my 20s, I had found a good association who started encouraging me to get into sort of self help type of materials and books and stuff. And then when I got into church and understood whose I was, that really helped boost my self esteem. But I mean, you're talking, I was in my early 20s, so I was years, just kind of a not like you wouldn't know that I had a low self-image, but I knew that I had a low self-image, right? And I started overcoming that in my 20s. And that was good. Imagine if I had a good self-image when I was in high school, maybe I would have done things even better, right?
Sure.
But I was just kind of the average kid, real low self-image. I was excited about things, but never, I would say I could do anything, but did I really believe it? I don't think so. Um, and then outside of that, my biggest struggle when I was an adult was early on was financial struggles. When I first got married, I was the guy who, I mean, I was a huge dork in high school, and I married my high school sweetheart, who was the girl who was always on the homecoming like cars. You know what I'm talking about? That girl? That's my wife.
What?
Yeah, yeah, the dorky guy with the jokes. And but one day, man, I met her in the movie theater. Story for another day. And I knew who she was, and I thought this is my shot. And it was like this 10 seconds of courage, man. And I sat next to her, and we started, fast forward a year or so, we started dating, and then I married the girl. Promised her everything. I sold her to the moon, and and so as a guy who promises like this is gonna be our life, a week after we got married, I lost my job, and so but God's good. I had this. I remember having this. I'll stop after this. I remember having this apartment, and when we were moving in, before I lost my job, it was obviously right before I lost it. They said, "Hey, I know we promised you this one. It was not anything fancy, but we're all out. All we have is the one with the fireplace." And I was like, "But I don't want to pay for the one with the fireplace. It's too expensive, and I would like to have the extra room." Like, well, that's all we got, but we won't charge you the extra. You just pay what you were gonna pay. I'll never use it. Well, fast forward a week later, I lost my job. Right, I didn't see it coming, and we couldn't afford to pay for the heat. So and luckily, my father-in-law, he is all about fireplaces. He's that guy. He brings over all this wood, and I'm like, all right, thanks. I'm thinking I'm never going to use this. Well, we used it that whole winter. I lost my job, and I got married at the end of October on the 20th. I lost my job right before November started, and then that whole winter we would have froze our butt off. But I had a fireplace. I remember putting my mattress in the living room floor, and we would put it in there, and then we closed all the other doors in the apartment, and then when people would come over, we'd put it all back like it was normal. And and at the time it was terrible. We were so like neither one of us could cook. We were just burning food. We just try to make something that tasted terrible. It was a disaster. That was our first year of marriage. So hard. It's already hard not to learn to live with somebody, but then to be so poor. And I would just take any job I could, because this is also, remind you, this is now going into 2008, right as the economy was crashing. So nobody was hiring anymore. And so I would take jobs like raking leaves, painting houses, anything I could do, right, to make money. And I finally got a job in a warehouse. Well, I was a college graduate. I'm supposed to be like necktie job guy. Now I'm packing boxes. And so that was the hardest part of my young life, right? It seems like, okay, I'm finally feeling good about myself, and then boom, there goes your job. Let's see how good you feel now. And if you want a hit to your self image, and you're supposed to take care of things like take care of your wife, and now she can take care of herself, but be part of that and contribute. And then you're no longer a contributor, that could take a hit. So anyways, that was a long story, but there's more to it. But yeah, that was one of my biggest struggles early on.
Wow, man, that's powerful. Powerful. We'll definitely. I think we've been hinting at doing an episode with our wives, man. We'll definitely have to get through episodes.
Yeah, I think we'll do one eventually called like Family Matters or something like that.
Something like that.
Anyways, what about you?
Yeah, man. I think for me is I feel like I've always been a confident person. I'm a quiet person by nature. I think one of the things that I had to get over was caring about people's perception of me. Um, and what I mean by that is staying in a situation or making certain moves to please people, but those moves are not pleasing myself. Um, Coming to the terms and coming to the grips that it's okay to be selfish in the aspect that if you're not pleasing yourself first and you're putting other people ahead of your own happiness, you'll always be miserable. You know, we tell people, don't be selfish and don't be selfish. When I say it's okay to be selfish, I mean that it's okay to put yourself first. Um, if you're always living for someone else's perception of you, you'll look great on the outside, but you go home miserable. So I had to get over that fear, man. And it took a lot of time. Um, but I know I'm not the only one that deals with that. And it's a lot easier said than done. But I promise you, once you get to that place where your own happiness is what matters most, it's a feeling like none other. And so, uh, kind of like yourself, man, I don't really have a crazy story. Um, I had both parents in the home growing up, great examples, uh, both college grads, grew up decent neighborhood suburbs. So life was not too crazy for me. Uh, Now I will say this: a little, I'll share a little bit more, be a little bit more transparent. Um, those of you that know, uh, like we've said, I did just recently get married, but I know what it's like to have a failed marriage. Now, for me, I would not say it was a failure. Uh, for me, I would say that it was the greatest lesson that I needed to learn of knowing what not to do. That quote I said earlier, forgetting the mistake and remembering the lessons. Um, those of you that may have felt like you failed in your relationship, you failed. And that doesn't just have to be with your husband and your wife. In any relationship in your life, don't allow that to cause you to feel like you cannot love again, and you cannot move on and get on from that situation. And don't worry about what people are going to say, who agrees with it, who does not agree with it. People are going to always have their opinion. One thing I've learned is that people are never satisfied. So whatever decision you make, there's always going to be someone that's going to have something negative to say. There's always going to be someone that agrees with it, someone who doesn't. And so you just have to learn how to allow that those negative perceptions, those negative opinions, use that to fuel you to keep on rising and don't run from your problems. Don't run from it. Stay in it, rise up in it, and it'll continue to mature you as a man, mature you as a woman, and you'll be all right. So yeah, man, that's kind of my story, bro. Do you have anything else? I think you're on mute, bro. I think you're on mute.
I was on mute. Yeah. No, I'm really excited about, I appreciate you sharing that. Really excited about, I'm really excited about where you're going with your new relationship. And statistically, at least probably over half the listeners, close to it, can relate to the story. So being vulnerable and sharing those things, I think helps a lot of people. I have, people, I realized over time that people would view my family, like my whole family, like my parents, my brother, as like we were perfect or something. And I don't know why we didn't ask for that. it just, I mean, I have a good family, but nobody's certainly not perfect.
Yeah.
There's arguments and everything else, right? And there might be less drama than someone else's. I don't know, but I remember my brother went through divorce, and it wasn't the worst divorce, wasn't the best divorce as far as like, craziness. But I can specifically remember I think how he felt about how others were viewing him in the situation, because everybody has a side to a story. Everybody says this happened or that happened, even if they're the same sort of story, different context to it. So is this person's fault or that one, or and you're really like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And people who you thought were friends are really not friends, and
Right.
or or now taking sides and stuff like that. And time does heal a lot of those things typically. But I remember him going through all that stuff. And then you got those awkward scenarios where you want to see old groups of friends, but you feel kind of odd about getting around them now with your new family set up and so forth. And so I remember him going through that, and it took some time to really, and I don't know if it's healed or not. I mean, he seems to be doing pretty well now, but definitely seeing it firsthand gave me a new perspective on the situation I never saw before.
Yeah.
And people would be like, "What? Justin got a divorce? Oh my gosh!" And it wasn't so much that like they were mad; they just like, "I didn't think any of that ever would happen in your family," kind of thing. I'm like, guys, we're normal people. Like
Right.
things happen. I mean, it is what it is, right? This is not like this is a new thing. And yes, our family is very pro marriage, and we do work hard on relationships and stuff, but there's certain things that are out of your control, and it's fine. I remember listening to Will Smith talk about how he's married to Jada, and he said he was married before Jada, which not a lot of people know. And he was married, he knew early on he was married to the wrong person, and but he had already made that commitment. And Jada said he was not going to leave his wife no matter what. He was not getting a divorce because his family was broken growing up, and he said this will not be me. And eventually his wife said, "I'm out of here," and he was like, "Oh." But he was not doing it, and it was a miserable. He said he was miserable,
Yeah.
and then but fast forward, he married the lady who he thought was meant for him, Jada, and obviously got a big family. They do a lot of cool things and stuff like that. So hey, God can take any situation and turn it into the greatest success story, and you can make a huge impact. And I know you will. So it's very cool. Thanks for sharing it.
Hey, man, I appreciate you, man. We'll definitely have to do an episode on like family matters.
Yeah, just came to mind. Wait till y'all see my son. Whew.
All right.
Anyways.
Absolutely. But listen, we want to get into our two reads of the week. Our first read of the week is The Purpose Driven Life by Rick Warren. John, tell us why this book is on our read of the week suggestion.
Yeah, so when I found, and you had hinted sort of at this, you had said something a little bit ago, a few minutes ago, about it's okay to put yourself first, and you're not going to be happy trying to please others. Um, I find, and I see this things a lot where someone says, "I'm trying to be happy. I'm trying to like put myself first," kind of thing. And but what a lot of people forget is how to find that happiness. And personally, I think that yes, are you happy when you're in better shape? Yes, in a better, that merely you're in a better mood. Are you happier when you are not strained on bills? Yes. But when you're happiest is when you understand your purpose in life.
Mhm.
That's when you become unapologetic about the decisions you need to make to support that purpose. That's why some people can go after something and they don't care what anybody says. They don't care if it gets in the way of, grandma's Thanksgiving dinner sometimes. And I'm not saying that's right. I'm just saying they don't care because they're like, this is my purpose. And Rick Warren in his book talks about basically God's plan for your life and how to find that. What is your purpose, right? And what is God's purpose for you? And it's one of the first early books that I read on my sort of journey through personal growth. made a huge impact for me, and it's not going to tell you like you need to go and be a pastor or you need to go and develop an app. It doesn't say that,
Right.
but it's talking about where is my place within this world, right? And then you can take the foundation that it'll tell you and figure out what is it you're supposed to do. What is it that you are created for? And once you realize that, it doesn't mean you're gonna have all the answers, and you still may make tweaks to the direction, but you always have sort of home base on where to start as far as your purpose. And so the purpose will stay the same. The journey may adjust, but
Mm,
that's one of the it was a foundational book for me.
that's good, man. Purpose may stay the same, but the journey may adjust. Okay. You've been dropping gems this whole episode, man. All right.
I'm sure I read that in a book somewhere. Maybe in that one. I don't know.
Our second read of the week, and this is my suggestion, and I don't want everyone to just fall off your seat here. Uh, I want to challenge us. This is a book I read a while back, sometime early last year. 12 Ways Your Phone is Changing You, by Tony Ryan Key. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. And the book basically is the premise of, are you controlling your phone or is your phone controlling you? Now, listen, I will be the first to tell you, I struggle. This book, you ever read something and you were cringing while reading it because the conviction was so strong?
Amen.
Um, you wanted to stop reading, but you literally could not,
Mhm.
because it challenged you so much. And I'm challenged even now. iPhone came out with a little feature. I think it was this year or sometime early last year. Screen time, and I put it off. I turned the setting off because I was embarrassed how much time I'm spending on my phone that you think is necessary, and it's really not. We always say that we don't have enough time to do this, and we don't have enough time to be productive in this area. I wish I had more time. I could do this. Really, it's like, no, it's not that you don't have the time. It's that you don't have the time management and the self control to put that time elsewhere. And we know we're 2020, so I use my phone for everything. If I lost my phone, I don't know what I would do, literally, because I don't know anybody's phone number. I mean, like literally, like it's just simple things like that. I look at my phone to know what date it is. I mean, just everything. And being a tech guy, it's just crazy. And so I really want our listeners to read this book, and I'll probably go back and read again, um, because I mean, I have to challenge myself, man. Hey, man, when you're at the dinner table, you need to put your phone down. I mean, it's just simple things like that. Time goes by so fast, and you'll look back and see what's more important: checking your timeline, or spending time with the ones you love, or doing something more productive. And so that's my read of the week. I know it's a challenging read. I know the listeners are probably cringing. Why are you doing this? This is for myself as well, even though I've already read this book. Uh, I want us to go on this journey, and so we can be better uh, all together, and we'll be better for it. Listen, man, this has been another week of unscripted, authentic leadership. I pray you guys have enjoyed this episode as much as we have recording it. And as always, we've already thanked our supporters, but we definitely want to thank you again. And we want to admonish you to continue to support us by subscribing to us there on our YouTube channel, Unscripted Authentic Leadership, and also following us on Facebook, Unscripted Authentic Leadership. Not just following us on Facebook, but also giving us a comment, give us a share, and give us a review. Give us a review on our Facebook page. You can also give reviews for those that are listening on Apple Podcasts or those streaming services. You can hit those 5 stars, and you can also leave us a review. We'll be grateful for it. As always, you can follow us on Instagram. Our page is at Unscripted Leadership. Follow John at John LeBrun, the number 3. Those of you that are listening to this, that is JOHNLEBRUN and the number 3. I know it almost sounds like LeBron. Those of you that know me knows I'm a LeBron James fanatic. But it is John LeBron, not John LeBron. John LeBron and the number three. You can also follow me at Lafayette B Lane. That is LaFayetteBlane. Those of you that are watching this, you'll probably still misspell my name, and that is okay. It is Lafayette B Lane. You can also stream and follow our podcast on all major podcast platforms. Those that you see on the screen: Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Buzzsprout, and others such as iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Chromecast. There's so many different other platforms. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can pretty much find our podcast on that platform. And once again, if you're interested in being involved for our Rise Up series, as we said, this is not just for the month of November, but we're looking for guests to come on anytime. Email us. Do not hesitate to email us there, unscriptedleadership@gmail.com. You can also DM us on our social media pages as well to get in contact with us. Listen, this has been another awesome episode of the Unscripted Authentic Leadership podcast, where we are seeking to lead change and also seeking to understand. As always, we are here to build bridges and not walls. Bridges connect and walls divide. I'm your host, Lafayette Lane, and joined with my co-host, John LeBron. Until next time, we pray that you be the leader that God has called you to be. God bless you.